Alright, it's Wednesday, 20th of October. About half an hour before the open of the RTH session. And here where we are currently, we're at 45.11. We're at the very top of yesterday's RTH sessions range. About 30 points below the all-time high. Having left behind 1, 2, 3 gaps. So the market is really strong. It's leaving these unauctioned areas and it's rushing to get to the all-time high. In my opinion, then if we look back at what happened the few times that we did the same thing in the past, here, after a dip, new all-time highs, continuation, and a balance. New all-time highs, balance, continuation. All-time high, balance, continuation. So my expectation once we get to the all-time highs is that we will most likely follow the pattern we had in the past. A week of either balancing or going slightly to the upside, followed by a big balancing area for a couple of weeks. We had a dip at the end of this one. We had a dip at the end of this one. But immediately after the taking out of the previous all-time high, we had a drift up, drift up, drift up, drift up. So once we take out the all-time high, my expectation is for a drift up, followed by some balancing, and eventually a slight correction. So that's on the daily time frame. The weekly time frame, we're one time framing up on the weekly. We're right on top of the VPOC of the week on the 9th of September, and we're heading for all-time highs at 40s and beyond. The one time framing to the downside will resume if we take out the low of the prior week, which is way below us at 43.20. If you look further down the time frames, that's a 60-minute chart. The yesterday's session, we had a 25-point range of a trend up day. In the overnight, we've had a very narrow 13 points of range. So that's the overnight. That's the daily yesterday. As you can see, we've had a impulse pullback continuation, almost 200 points over a very strong push-up, so quite bullish. My expectation is we will take the all-time high, scenario 1, and scenario 2 will be for us to have a bit of take a little bit of a breather, pull back to this area of resistance, about 80, 82, before we resume up again. So that's scenario 2. This is the LVN that the line was meant to go to. If we have a deeper dive, we may test the 4430 VPOC of the whole area before we find a base, potentially find a base. We had a inverted head and shoulders kind of thing, and we are correcting now. Heading for the all-time high. So that's that on a 60-minute time frame. The overnight session has only had a 13-point range. Currently we're right on top of the high of yesterday RTH session, as well as we're on top of this HVN. At 11, so big balancing area. The volume on the overnight session is about 160, currently 157,000 contracts, a bit below the normal, and we had a push up, pull back, another push, and we're flagging, and my expectation is for a continuation to the upside. So that's my scenario 1. And a very shallow dip on the open, test the previous day's VPOC at 0775 for a continuation up. So that's scenario 1. In green, scenario 2. In blue is the opposite. Where we explore the value area of yesterday down to the century figure, and below that the LVN. Test the gap zone from yesterday and potentially close it. So that's scenario 2. This is the LVN there at 80. We could have a trend day up, having accumulated a lot of volume right on top of the overnight VPOC. So instead of having a little bit of a test down to find a base to go up, we might as well just burst up, take out the overnight high, take out the all-time high and beyond, up to 50, 57 on vol sigma. Scenario 3 and scenario 4. If we have a strong selling to reverse the gains of the last couple of days, take out the gap zone, test the VPOC at 72. And below that we have a cluster of levels between 68 and 64. So that's scenario 4. 44, 64. So that's the 4 scenarios for today. Yesterday my scenario 1 was for a Yesterday my scenario 1 on the open was for a test to close the gap and then continue higher to, my expectation was to go to the 30-40 points of range from 80 to 511, which we did get to. So we did have scenario 1 yesterday, but without the dip lower to close the gap, or instead we dipped to the 50% of the gap. So we opened between the open and the prior day's high. We tested the mid of that gap before we found the base. So that's that for today.